What's up, everyone? Kevin here from Skywatcher. Welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatch USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. It is November 7th, 2025. That's when this episode aired. All of our episodes, or 99% of our episodes, are live. But they're all recorded, so you can all go back and watch them at any time if there's a particular topic that you missed or you can't watch them live. I know a lot of us are at work this time of day, but you can always go back to our library and watch it. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on the channel. Let us know we're doing a good job. You can also email your ideas for future episodes at info@skywatchusa.com and title it What's Up. So definitely appreciate all of that. If you want to support us a little bit more, you can always head over to skywatchusa.com, pick up any Skywatcher product. We do have sales that are going on right now. Our Dobbs are on sale. Our mounts are still on sale too. So there's stuff going on. And then if you want to support the channel, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. And there we go. So yeah. Fun stuff for all. So anyway, let's jump in and get started. If you want to stay up with what's going on here at Skywatcher, see what sales are coming, used equipment, you can head over to our website, skywatchusa.com, hit subscribe. Can't talk. Subscribe and save up at the top. That allows you to join our email list, and you can hop on there, and it just keeps you up to date with what's cool here at Skywatcher. So but without further ado, let's get started. The big bright thing in the sky, the moon. So new moon is November 20th this year. So your dark sky weekend is November 22nd and 23rd. The weekend before is actually probably decently dark as well. You will get a little crescent rising early in the evening. Or I'm sorry, early in the morning hours. You'll get a little bit of a crescent moon. So November works out this year to where you could have two dark sky weekends to head out. But the primary one and the closest one to the new moon date is the 22nd and the 23rd. So right around Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And then, of course, we also have the full moon, which actually just happened. The full moon was November 6th. That was the beaver moon. It gets its name, at least here in North America. It's called the beaver moon, and that's because beavers are getting their homes ready for, the waters to freeze over and prepare themselves. So, yeah, that's what's going on right now. The moon having just passed full moon. The evening skies are going to start getting darker, although if you're staying up later in the night, the moon will start to make its way back up and light up the sky. But anyway, so yeah, that's what's going on with the moon right now, and it's a fun one to go out. But right now, if you're really interested in the moon, you can get up in the early morning hours and take a look at it. So there you go. Planets. We are getting back into planet season. Saturn is pretty much at prime time right now. Let's get over to Stellarium. Stellarium is a free planetarium program that you can get on your computer. It can control telescopes as long as you have the drive and all the drivers and stuff there. But anyway, it's a fantastic program. It's free. It's a pretty easy one to navigate to. I like to use it for this stuff. But pretty much right as it gets dark, Saturn's nice and high in the southeastern sky. So it's in really good position right now to observe. The rings are pretty much edge on right now, but they are slowly going to be opening up, but they're still, you're looking right down the edge of them right now. So, but it's a cool view. We've been able to see like 3 or 4 moons around Saturn the last few nights when we've been out doing events. So there's a lot of stuff that can be seen right now. It's still a nice view, even though the rings aren't in their best displayed position, but that's a good one to go after. Not far from Saturn is also the planet Neptune. If you've never observed Neptune before, it's a bit challenging. It looks like a very tiny bluish looking star in the field of view. although it's not quite what we would call stellar. Stellar, if you're new to astronomy, stellar refers to an object looking like a star, or non-stellar means it doesn't look like a star. And that could be a galaxy, that could be a nebula, that could be a planet, whatever the case may be. But Neptune, among the star field that it sits in, you can see that it's not a star. It doesn't render and doesn't look like a star in the field of view. But it looks like a very small blue little ball. But because it's so small, you need to be careful that you're not just going to drive right over it. So using a go-to mount can make that pretty easy, but it's pretty close to Saturn if you want to take a look at it. Throwing some magnification on it will bring it out a little bit more looking like a planet, but it's still not this groundbreaking, mind-blowing image like, Saturn or Jupiter or, the closer planets. But it's still a fun one to show. I showed some people this the other night. They got to see it. They thought it was neat. It's like 2.6 billion miles away right now. So it's what I like to call a concept object. And there's a number of these when we show people certain things. And I will tell people it's like, this is what I would call a concept object. It's not that the view you're looking at is mind-blowing. It's the concept of what you're looking at that's mind-blowing. So Neptune, I would chuck into that thing. Anyway, so you got Saturn, Neptune up right now. They're not too far from each other. As the evening goes on, we're starting to get the Pleiades rising, which we'll talk about later. But not far from the Pleiades is the planet Uranus. So that's coming into the sky in the evening now. About 8 o'clock, you can start to catch it. And it'll look better and better as the month goes on. But Uranus is a cool one because it actually is easy to find, and it does stand out amongst the star field a bit more because it looks like a planet. You can actually tell without too much effort that it's not a star. It actually looks spherical, and it has a very light blue color to it. But it doesn't look like a little stellar pinpoint like a star does. So Uranus is actually easier to do. Neptune's more of a challenge. And Uranus is pretty easy to find right now just because of how close it is to the Pleiades. So something to go after. After that, though, as the night goes on, we're not getting Jupiter into the evening sky early in the month until nearly midnight. At this point, but as the month progresses, Jupiter's going to become higher and higher into the sky, and by the end of the month, Jupiter will actually be coming up at a pretty reasonable hour. You'll start to see it breaking the eastern horizon around 9 o'clock, and then as we move into December, it'll be rising at a more convenient time. But that means if you're going to be getting a telescope for the holidays, we've got some nice planets to actually go observe. We'll have Saturn up. Of course, we'll have the moon somewhere in there. Then we'll have Jupiter, all that fun stuff. So anyway, there's where we're at with the planets right now. There's some questions floating around in here too. Why no Starfest Canada recap episode was done this time? Because we didn't go. Because of the strikes with Air Canada, it shut down us or any of our team being able to get up to Starfest, and we weren't able to attend. Our stuff got up there. We were actually planning to go. We had all of our reservations done, but we weren't able to make it up there because Air Canada was on strike. Our flights got canceled, and there was no way, there was no reasonable way for us to get up there. So we didn't do a recap episode because we didn't go, and there wasn't anything for us to really tell you about because we weren't there. Okay. Maybe if any of you have had experience with our tech support or repairs. Oh, yes. If any of you have had experience with our technical support or repairs, let us know what you thought of it. This would be in like the chat or the comments. Good or bad, we're looking at our process right now, and getting your feedback would be helpful. So if you have worked with us before on tech support or repairs, we'd like to know your feedback on it. So check that in the comments or email us and all that fun stuff. So, all right, the sun. We are in solar maximum right now. The sun's a very dramatic object. There's some nice sunspots up there right now. As with anything related to the sun, please make sure that you're using the appropriate solar filters that are safe, so that do not harm you, your eyes, your friends' eyes, or your equipment. So please make sure before doing any type of solar observing, you know what you're getting yourself into. Now, the sun is very dynamic. It's changing all the time. There are multiple types of filters that you can actually use to observe the sun in different frequencies. And we have episodes that talk about observing the sun and the different filters and what they do. Maybe we can link that in the chat there. But it's going to be a fun object, but please make sure that you're going to be safe doing it. Now, that's the thing I forgot. I knew I was sitting on one. Let me bring this up real quick. I knew there was a tab that was missing. There we go. Okay, so if you're observing hydrogen alpha on the sun, hydrogen alpha filters, these are also very specific filters for the sun, not a nighttime imaging filter used to observe the sun. Do not do that. Use dedicated equipment, and we'll go from there. So right now, if you want to know what's going on in hydrogen alpha, I like to look at GONG, G-O-N-G. I just search GONG H alpha in Google, and this will pop up. But this is a pretty up-to-date look at the sun. Here's what's going on in hydrogen right now. There's some nice sunspots. There's a really nice prominence right there, almost detached. So that'll be the cool thing to look at. Some nice filaments, but there's some fair amount of stuff looking on up there. Now, if you're just using basic filters like white light filters, there's some really nice sunspots to look at. There's a big one up here. We did have an X-class flare earlier this week, but there's some nice sunspots going up. The big guy right now is 4274. But then you have like something like this big chain down here in 4276, and then you've got some little stuff kind of scattered around there as well. But yeah, we'll be doing all of that. So if you're observing the sun, make sure you get out and take a look at it, but please do it safely. Let's see. Questions. What is the Skywatcher Ethera? I hear it mentioned in the 2025 Grand Canyon Star Party recap episode. Ethera is a new doublet line of refractors that we're working on. They were supposed to come out, and then they got delayed, and now they're being delayed at this point. So we're working on them, but they're not ready to really showcase yet. When and where will you announce the October totem winners? For a while, we were putting all the totem images and showcasing every month what everyone sent in. It started to get really cumbersome because we're talking 20, 30, sometimes 40 different entries. So we cut it out of this. Now, there's been requests to put kind of the top picks of each month in. I will probably go back and do that. This week's just been really hectic, and I wasn't able to get all of it together for the webcast, but I'm hoping to implement that back where we pick like the top 5 images or just the top 3 images, because that's how we pick. Is we'll pick like the top 3 images or top 2 images, whatever's in there of the month, and then those will all go into the final folder where our guest judges will then be able to go in and pick the top 3 winners. But I wasn't able to get that in this month. I will try to get that in next month. Wrong thing. There we go. Meteor showers. There's actually quite a few meteor showers that are happening this month, but timing wise with the moon is what's kind of messing a lot of stuff up. So we have the torrid meteor showers, southern and northern. Now the southern one, as you can see, the peak has already passed. The northern torrids are just about to peak, moving into the next week or so, midweek. But the problem with it is we have to contend with a very bright moon. The full moon was this past Wednesday. What was that, like the 6th? 5th. Yeah, the 5th. So now the moon is still going to be bright moving into later evening hours, and generally meteor showers are best viewed after midnight. So we're going to be contending with a fairly bright moon. So this year, the Taurids and the Leonids are not really well placed to work with the moon. So the moon's actually going to probably take away some of the stuff that you'll be able to see with the current meteor showers. So just something to consider. So comets. It's been busy with comets, as I'm sure many of you have actually seen. There's two big ones that have been up lately. Of course, everyone has been mainly looking at this guy. This is Comet C2025 A6 Lemon. This one has been kind of cruising the western horizon from northwest horizon to southwestern horizon over the last few weeks. It's not a naked eye comet for as easy as it is to see. It's just not bright enough to really catch it naked eye. It has this really striking tail, very nice, delicate details inside of it, but it's mostly photographic. This was shot with an Esprit 120 with a ZWO 6200 full frame camera, and this is 35 60-second exposures, 1x1 bin, just a one-shot color. And I stacked on the comet. I didn't stack on the stars, or else the comet would blur. I kind of like the streaked star look, but a lot of much better imagers and processors than me are able to get it to stack to where the stars are pinpoint and the comet's there. But Lemon's really been the highlight comet lately, and it's still easily visible in the western horizon right now. So it's still in a good spot to where you can actually see the coma of the comet, or the main core of the comet, and like a 3 to 4 inch telescope. We were looking at it at a school event on Tuesday, and even in the finder scope we could see it. So it's not difficult to see, although the tail you will have a hard time seeing, but photographically the tail comes out pretty quickly. But yeah, so something to think about. Now there is also Comet Swan is also up. C2025 R2 Swan is also visible right now. It is not nearly as detailed and dramatic as Lemon is. Swan has been cruising up in kind of the Sagittarius region, although it's probably moved on. I haven't observed it in like a week or two. But it looks like a little fuzzball. And if you take a picture of it, it's a green fuzzball. There's not a lot of detail to Swan, but Lemon's very good. And of course, the big one everyone keeps talking about is 3i Atlas, which will start coming into view for us in the Northern Hemisphere probably next weekend, starting around like the 15th is when that's going to start coming into play. And my understanding is it will be best visible in the early part of December. I think around the 4th or the 5th is what I had heard, is when we're going to be able to get a really good spot for Atlas. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. If you want to see more about it, I like to go to cometchasing.skyhound.com. It gives you a really nice breakdown of all the comets that are visible or could be interesting or might be leading up to something interesting. But we're really having a good time with comets right now. So you still have a good shot with Lemon. Swan is up there if you just want to see kind of a puffball. And then we're going to be able to see Atlas kind of mid-month coming around. So there's a few of them. The particular one we're talking about is 3i Atlas, this guy right here. Although I have not tried K1 Atlas yet. I might have to try that one because it doesn't look like it's too difficult either. Shining about 10th magnitude. But anyway, these are like the major comets that we're looking at. But there's a lot of stuff visible. And then we might even get this guy towards the later end of November into December. It looks like this 210P Christensen. This one could be interesting as well when we get later into the month. So comet-wise, there's a lot going on right now. So yeah, this would be a good time to get out and do some comet observing. Let's see. Questions. How do you all track comets? Do mounts let you do that? Some of the high-end mounts, like Paramounts from Software Bisque, I believe, do have a comet track capability. Because when you're using some of the more advanced mounts, they're actually able to pull down the orbital data of comets or satellites or whatever you're doing. And you could actually tell the mount to track on that using the orbital data. Most mounts, you're going to have to just put in the right ascension and declination of the comet and just have it slew to the field. And then you're just going to take images or observe it while it's within that field of view. But it will move out of the field of view. Now, next week, our episode is actually observing comets. So I don't want to go too much into comets because next week's episode is all about comets. So we're going to do that next week. But yeah, a lot of the really high-end mounts, Software Bisque, I'd be surprised if Astrophysics didn't have it. I'm sure 10 micron can do it. Yeah, so a lot of the really high-level stuff could probably track on a comet. But most of the time, if you're just trying to image it, you can actually just slew over the field of view, center it the way that you want. And yeah, so this shot that I did of Lemon last week or the week before that, I'm not sure. This was on an EQA RH with an Esprit 120 and an ASI Air. I just had it slew to the coordinates, and then I slowly centered the comet to frame it the way that I wanted. So there was a little bit of manual effort in there, but then I just let the mount run and do its thing. So, question. I've noticed my Lunt 40 has a sweet spot off center where image is very good and prominence in chromosphere. Is that normal for H-alpha telescopes? Yes. Pretty much every solar telescope is going to have a sweet spot. Now, this comes up a lot with the heliostars lately, where people will write in and be like, oh, well, you can see right here, it's not all even. Well, you got to find the sweet spot. Now, when you're using an H-alpha solar telescope, there's a lot going on inside of it. It's a much more complex optical system than just a refractor. While it is based on a refractor, there's things going on with it. So like on a Lunt 40, it's a little f10 refractor. It's a pretty basic setup, but it's got the etalon up front, the etalon tilts, and then the blocker has several different pieces inside of it to also use it as a filtering mechanism. There's a lot of things that have to work together to make a H-alpha solar telescope work and to be safe. And some of those filters actually have to be tilted. So at times, every telescope, every solar telescope from any manufacturer is going to have a sweet spot, the happy spot, where when you put the solar disk within it, everything looks nice and even and illuminated, but it a lot of times is slightly off axis. It just works that way. There's nothing wrong with the telescope. Every solar telescope is pretty much like that. Everyone's unique like a fingerprint. You just have to find out where your particular telescope, whether it's a heliostar, a Coronado, a Lunt, whatever, you'll just have to figure out where your telescope's sweet spot is and just know that, okay, when I put the sun here, that's where it's happy. There's nothing wrong with the scope. It's just that's how they work. So hopefully that helps. Very, very common question. Back to comets. Can you view them visually, let's say with a 40 millimeter wide angle eyepiece on a Schmidt-Cassegrain? Yeah, you can see most of these comets visually. Lemon, which is pictured right up here. We used a 7-inch telescope this past week. It's pretty easy to see it. Looks like a little fuzzy star, like a puffy looking star. But yeah, if you've got like a 4-inch or larger telescope, you know, you're just looking for the core of the comet, also known as the coma. A lot of times you won't get the tail. The tails tend to be more faint. So either darker skies, some of the brighter ones you'll get a nice tail on, like Pan stars during 2020. We could see the tail on that. But for Lemon, 4-inch or larger telescope, no big deal. You don't need a lot of power on it, but yeah, you won't get much of a tail. But yeah, it's nothing really fancy or special that you have to do on the telescope side. What? Let's see. Okay. What is the cable to connect an AZGTI to a Raspberry Pi? Does it need a specific chip? I'm assuming you're talking about like an EQ mod cable. You can get them off of Amazon. Some of them, particularly on the USB side, do have like a chip inside of the USB plug. I don't remember what it's called. But you want to get one that's specific and can work with an AZGTI. An AZGTI has 6 pins in the hand controller port, where our Equatorials have an 8-pin layout. So you'll have to get like the AZ version of the plug. And they do sell it on Amazon. I've seen it. I have never used one personally for that. I have used and have a couple of the EQ mod cables for Equatorials, and those cables work fine. But your mileage may vary on the AZGTI just because it's an Altaz mount. If the Solar Quest can track in the daytime without polar aligning, why isn't there a mount that does the same at night so we don't have to do polar aligning? The Solar Quest has GPS and a sensor on it, and it's also an Altaz mount, so no Altaz mount needs to be polar aligned. Even at night, you don't polar align an Altaz mount. But there's special equipment inside the Solar Quest where it's able to auto align itself. Skywatcher, we are working on stuff like that in our SynScan Pro app. There is it's called Syn Matrix. I need to test and play with it more, but it uses your phone to plate solve and point your telescope all over the place. And it works with our wireless mounts. You can play with it. Our team's still kind of learning and messing with it. But no Altaz mount, even at night, needs to be polar aligned. Although if you want to do astrophotography, like if that's your goal, an equatorial mount is really the way to go. Because an equatorial mount tracks in the same arc that the stars move across the sky. So, but you do have to polar align an equatorial mount. It's just part of the game. If you're just doing visual, okay, not a big deal. But for astrophotography, I would recommend using an equatorial mount because it does address a lot of the other issues. Allows you to take longer exposures. There's a wider range of equatorials that you can choose from to hold a variety of different weight capacities. And then it tracks like the stars move across the sky, and you don't have to deal with what's called field rotation. So as an equatorial mount moves with the arc across the sky, it's also rotating the same way as the stars are rotating as they travel across the sky. An Altaz mount kind of does a stair-step motion as it tracks. And as it does that, it's following whatever the target is, but the field is actually rotating. So the stars at the edge can actually streak. Short exposures and stacking. If you're doing photography, you could do something like a hyperstar in Altaz. You're shooting so quickly that you're not getting the blur or the field rotation on the edge. But over time, if it's not done correctly, you can start to see those problems. So as much as many of us don't like polar aligning, the advantage of what happens when you polar align a mount is actually really beneficial for deep sky imaging. So. And speaking of deep sky, now we're actually technically we are in the season of fall here in the Northern Hemisphere, but some of the summer objects are still visible. We still have a lot of our fall objects rising. Winter constellations are not that far away, but a lot of the very prominent summertime objects are also still available to view, particularly the ones that are nice and high near the summer triangle. One of those being M57, the Ring Nebula. It's up in Lyra, about 2,500 light years away from the Earth. This was the first planetary nebula I found on my own. I remember finding it in the front yard with a little 6-inch Newtonian at the time. It's very easy to find because it sits within 2 bright stars in Lyra, not too far from the naked eye star Vega. So it's not a difficult one to track down, but it is small. Now, because it is a planetary nebula, it does mean that it can react to certain filters because it's emitting light. It's an emission nebula. Oxygen 3 filters, or O3 for short, or ultra high contrast, or UHC filters. Those are two nice filters that can actually work really well with this. So I would recommend one or the other, or eventually you'll want both because they're very different filters. UHC is what's called a broadband filter, so it passes a wider range of light. O3 filters are narrowband filters specifically tuned to oxygen 3's wavelength, which is kind of more in that blue-green. So O3 is very powerful when observing planetary nebulas because there's generally a lot of O3 signal coming from them. But a UHC can be a good filter to have as well. So both of them in the case I would highly recommend because they do complement one another. But either one of those filters will work really good, especially if you're trying to observe the Ring Nebula in light polluted skies. I would probably recommend at least a 4-inch telescope, although it's a lot easier to see in like a 6-inch and larger telescope. Filters like O3 and UHC tend to be better suited for probably telescopes 6 to 8-inch and larger. The more light you've got going through, the better. But in a very light polluted sky, especially with the moon up, because we did this last weekend actually, even a C8, like an 8-inch Cassegrain, the ring can be a bit of a challenge to see because it can get washed out. So having those filters can sometimes help improve the contrast a little bit, particularly on the O3 side. So imaging. The biggest issue with the Ring Nebula in imaging is it's tiny. It is small. So long focal length. This was shot with a C14 Edge HD. So big scope, long focal length. You can shoot it in smaller telescopes and you can see it, but it is very small. And most planetary nebulas are going to be that way. So something to think about. Suggestion: change your stellarium location to North Pole, and it's fun to see the stars and sun go all the way around the horizon. Something fun to do on a rainy, cloudy day. I will have to give that a go and just watch it go wee. But yeah, I'll have to mess around with that. Kevin, who installed your pier? I did. And several good friends of mine helped me do that. That was a process. We actually have an episode about that process. Making the observing pad. I was going to do an observatory, but I live in an HOA and they were being jerks about it. So observatory got canned, but instead we did an observing pad, and I actually prefer the observing pad a little bit. I mean, I wish everything was enclosed and I could just leave it out there, but the pad allows me to have more space than the observatory would have. I don't have like the storage capability like the observatory would have allowed, and the convenience just leave it out there. But having a pier and just using like a mount that's covered under a 365 cover has worked really well. But yeah, the pad is like twice the size the observatory was gonna be. And then because it's a nice flat, open, paved space, it also works out for, having people over, and I could put multiple telescopes out there. We could put a table if we're hosting a large get together. It just worked out better. But anyway, if you want to know more about the pier and the installation process, I documented all that in that episode. It's not a difficult process, but it took a while, especially because the ground out here is so hard. Had to rent a lot of stuff like augers and stuff like that, and it was a process. It's not a difficult thing to do, but it's time consuming. So, but the metal pier itself, not the concrete pier that's in the ground, because I didn't do a concrete pier all the way to the mount. I did a concrete pier into the ground about 3 feet, 18 inches wide, reinforced concrete. It sticks up probably 6 inches above the ground surface. And then by the time the pavers went in, it sticks up probably 2 or 3 inches above the pavers. I wanted it flush, but that's how it worked. The metal steel pier that's sitting on there, that pier was made by Software Bisque. I think it's like their 42 or 48 inch. I don't remember the height of it. It worked out really well. But I like the Bisque piers. They are heavy. But I like bisque piers because they're flat on top, because their mounts use 4 corner bolts to mount their flat foot. But because it's flat, it means you could just get really easy adapters made up from like a machine shop or something, and you could adapt all kinds of mounts to the pier itself. So that's how I go about that. Another object that's up right now is NGC 7000, the North American Nebula up in Cygnus. This object is really big, like multiple full moons wide. You need very wide field optics to see this. One of the best views I've ever seen of this was through a Teleview NP101 up at the Grand Canyon. Really low power eyepiece. Oxygen 3 filter is really the trick for this one. But you want dark skies and a really wide field of view, like 3 or 4 degree field of view to get the whole thing. If you're observing it with larger optics, again, UHC can work, but O3s are way better, especially to get that contrast. But larger telescopes, you'd be able to see like sections of the nebula itself. So, yeah. Another fun one that's kind of off the beaten path, but it's up in Cygnus, is NGC 6826, the Blinking Planetary Nebula. This is tiny as well. It generally tends to show up more blue when you look at it. So does the blue snowball, which is up in Pegasus Andromeda area. That's another good one I should have thrown in right now, but the Blinking Planetary is kind of fun because the bright star in the center is just bright enough to where it actually oversaturates the eye. And as your eye's trying to focus on the star itself, it's causing the nebula itself to look like it blinks, but that's your vision trying to basically expose a very bright object and a very faint object simultaneously. So it gets its name, the Blinking Planetary, because it's kind of an illusion that your eye is doing on you. Much like the Ring Nebula, this one is very small. So if you're going to image it, we're talking long focal length. You really got to get in there to see the details of it. Or you just go and get the Hubble picture like I did, because I don't have a picture of it. But yeah, so there's something to actually check out as well. Question, what monitors are you all using? I found out when editing photo images on my monitor looks way different than my phone and even printed. My monitor, I have 3 monitors on this machine. My right side monitor failed and we replaced it with another 20-something inch monitor. The monitors over here, my original monitors are, what is this model? HP VH240A. I don't know. This is just what I got to make it work. They've always worked for me, but you can calibrate monitors, which I'm not sure how to do it. But some of our marketing team has calibrated monitors, so that way with whatever they're doing as they build like an ad to go to print, or if we're doing something for a Sky and Telescope magazine, we're going to do an ad there, or we're going to do like a box art. All their machines are calibrated monitors. It is a bit of a process, and I believe there's like a little diode that hangs over and it measures and calibrates, but others on here might have better ideas on how to do that. But I know calibrating monitors can help. I just don't do it very often. Another good one that's up right now, another planetary nebula. This one's on the other side of the spectrum. It's huge. It's a big planetary, is NGC 7293, or the Helix Nebula. It's up in Aquarius. Again, for the most part, planetary nebulas generally respond well to oxygen 3 and UHC filters. This one tends to have a lot of hydrogen in it. This is very reactive to night vision as well, but it's a very big planetary nebula. It looks like an eye. It's actually really weird to look at. Imaging wise, I've seen this done with a variety of different things. But this is a good one to go after because a lot of modern telescopes, it frames up halfway decent in it. So, but it has a very large halo. So you might want to give yourself a little bit of room on that. It's still small in comparison to, say, like the North American Nebula or the Veil, these really big, or like Orion, these really big nebulas that kind of stretch out quite far. But the helix for a planetary nebula is rather large, but it still frames well in most telescopes. But I have seen some cool narrowband shots done with it because it is heavy in hydrogen alpha, as you can see with a lot of the red here. But this one, you can really play quite a bit with it. Question: what sources are there for observing that would house my seal? Or, sorry, let me restart this. Question: what sources are there for an observatory that would house my 10-inch Schmidt that lives on a CGEM mount? Probably the easiest observatories that I'm aware of are like the pod observatories. They're probably the cheapest option. Now the pods, for a while, the pods have been a little weird. Let me see if I can find this really quick. Pod observatory. Pod. Skyshed. I don't know why I couldn't think of them. I've talked to them before. The Skyshed pod domes for the money are really hard to beat. The one thing that people don't tend to like about them is the way the original dome works. Is it's kind of like a clam design. So it kind of opens up halfway. So if you're trying to get to zenith, you're blocked. Now, they do make like a shelf, which allows you to kind of push that off. The observatory dome can be pushed off the structure a little bit, and you're able to get up to zenith at that point. But I've seen several of these. I've had friends who've owned them. For what they are, they're really nice. And the nice thing is you can break them down. Like if you're moving houses, it's not a permanent structure, so it's easy to work around. Just the big complaint is the door is a little short, so you kind of have to get under there, and the roof can be a little awkward to work with. Now, what's nice is they also have the new one, I think it's the Pod S. Now, the Pod S, if I was going to buy a pod, it would be a Pod S. They actually looked at those complaints, and they made a new top to it. I think they actually made the walls a little higher too. But the Pod S is like a traditional dome. It's got the slot. I think you can get it motorized to where you can control it with software. So that's one way I would go if I was going to be spending money, would be a Pod S. There's also the Next domes, which I've seen a couple people have. I've seen them at NEAF before. They're very similar to the Pod S. I know Dylan O'Donnell has one, and he does videos about that. That one would probably work as well. After that, so between the Skyshed pod and the Next domes, which are both very similar in size, I think they're like 8-foot domes. After that, that's kind of your best option for off the shelf, if you will. After that, you'd have to go to like a custom roll-off design and figure out who's going to build it and handle that for you. I like roll-offs better than domes because for a few reasons, but they're a lot easier to work with. You just open the roof and you're ready to go. They also don't look like an observatory because they just look like a shed. So it doesn't get people to be like, what's that weird looking dome there? So it looks a little bit more inconspicuous. But yeah, after Next dome and pods, you're getting more custom built to order kind of stuff. But pods should handle your 10-inch Schmidt on a CGEM mount without a problem. So hopefully that helps. There are other options out there. I probably forgot a few of them. But those are the two that just immediately come to mind. But there are other options out there. But do some digging. Last question. What is the range of prices for a dome? You're going to have to check with the people who produce it because there are different options. You can get the basic one from like Pod where you have to push the dome off. You can get it with the Pod S. You could get the Pod S with motors on it. You can really make these advanced as you want. And of course, with that, the price, fluctuates. So if you're curious about it, call them. I know the people over at Skyshed Pods, they're great to talk to. Don't be afraid to pick their brain. They're really receptive to it. So, but a Pod S would probably, if I had to pick one, the Pod S would probably be the way I would go. And then you could pick, they have like different additions you can put on it depending on the space and stuff. So hopefully that helps. Another cluster that's up right now, M15. It's up in Pegasus, about 35,000 light years away from the Earth. You can see this in pretty much any sky unless it's like really, really terrible. It is a slightly smaller globular cluster than like the bigger one, M13. So there's that. But it's an easy one to go after. If you've got like an 8-inch Cassegrain, it's an easy one to track down. So there's something to consider there. But that's a fun one to show people in an outreach event right now. It's very well placed at the moment. And generally in town, it's fairly easy to see in kind of average mid-range aperture telescopes, like 6 to 10 would be a good one. Of course, we have our big staple, the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light years away. You can see this in almost any sky. A lot of time visually, you're just looking at the core. Slightly darker skies, larger instruments. You can start to see some of the extensions of the arms. Maybe you're getting some of the dust bands, like these two large ones right here. You can see those pretty easily. And a slightly darker sky. And then you have its companions like M32 and M110. Those are generally fairly easy to see if they fit in the field of view. Imaging wise, Andromeda is pretty easy, but there are some interesting details like in hydrogen alpha, and I'm starting to see some stuff in oxygen 3 as well. So you can kind of get exotic with stuff like that. So opinions on SV Bony products. I really haven't used them that much. I know people who have them. They seem okay. But I don't have a lot of experience with them, so I don't feel like I can give a major opinion on it. It seems to be good for those in the budget side of things. Support wise, I've heard they have an office, but I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know. I don't want to talk down about a product or promote a product that I just don't have any hands-on experience about. They seem to do the job for the price. That's about it. That's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't have enough hands-on experience to probably provide guidance on it. Question about Celestron product. Will the 0.63 reducer SCT from Star Arizona work on a 5SE? I have no idea. I have not used their reducer. The typical Schmidt reducer that like Celestron sells, that I believe works on all their Schmidt Cassegrains from the 5 to a 14. It just threads on the back. But that's their typical reducer. But the Star Arizona ones, I haven't had a Schmidt reducer from them. Give them a call. They're open right now. Give them a call. I'm sure you got Scott, Steve, some of the guys are down there. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your question on their product, but I'm not sure. But they're really easy to talk to. I'm sure they'd easily answer your question for you, and they are open right now. So if you're looking for something more challenging right now, you've got NGC 7331 and Stephan's Quintet. These are up in Andromeda. So just so you know, here's the breakdown. NGC 7331 is the large one right here. It's also called the Deerlit Galaxy. And then Stephan's Quintet is this little collection of galaxies up here at the upper right. This is a really interesting cluster of galaxies, but your mileage may vary because it's small. Dark skies are really needed for this, and larger aperture is helpful. You can see this probably in an 8-inch telescope. If you really want to start getting into the nitty gritty of the galaxy details, definitely want to go larger aperture, 12-inch plus, to get more stuff on that. So that's kind of a more challenging stuff like that. So that's a good one to go after right now, and it's a fun one to actually image too. It's not too difficult to image even in town. You could do it with like a 5-inch refractor. It's just kind of getting the pixel size to work with you. But that would be a good way to go. Our totem target for last month, this was NGC 7129. You can definitely, I need to go through and kind of organize everyone's pictures and take a look at them. But this was a bit of a challenging one, so I'm eager to see that. We'll get all that put together and those patches out the door. And then if you're looking for this month for totem is IC 5079. This one's going to be a challenge, but as you can see, this was done with narrowband filters because you can tell from the color rendering of the nebula itself. There's a lot of O3 and a little bit of hydrogen probably put in here. It looks like Ron did a Hubble palette. So there's probably a little bit of sulfur, a little bit of hydrogen, but because of the blue color, that tells me there's a lot more signal in oxygen 3. So if you're going after it, it looks like O3 might be the filter of choice to utilize it, especially if you're using a monochrome camera, but hopefully that helps. But we'll be eager to see this. Wait, did I get a number wrong? Oh, I said 79. I'm sorry. I see 7076. My apologies. So I'm sorry if I said 79. It should be 76. The numbers are right. So disregard. But anyway, that's the totem target this month. Best of luck trying to get it. It's probably going to be a bit challenging, but that's the point. That's the whole point of target of the month, is to start getting off the beaten path and not just going after like Messier targets all the time. So good luck. All right, guys, that's actually pretty much it for November night skies. There's plenty of stuff to see right now. Could spend an hour just talking about targets. But yeah, hopefully that was helpful for you. Lots of comets to see. Lots of cool deep sky stuff to see. The planets are back. It's a busy season right now. So get out, start observing. It's cooling off. So it's a good time. If you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe. Leave a like on a video. Let us know we're doing a good job. You can join our email list by heading over to skywatchusa.com and just hitting subscribe and save up at the top. Remember, you can get some pretty sweet deals on our website if you head over to deals and hit clearance. We've got clearance stuff there. And then we also have used as open box items that have been inspected. Got a bunch of stuff there. I'm not aware of anything new being posted to announce to everyone right now. But we'll do our best to announce it when there's new stuff up. But if you want a good deal on something, all this has been inspected, but it is open box. But you can head over there and check all that out. So some cool stuff there as well. All right, everyone. Next Friday, we're talking about observing and imaging comets. So there was a lot of questions about everything that was going on. So join us next week. We'll talk about comets. I'll tell you how I go about it. There's plenty of others out there that are much better at imaging comets than I am. But I'll tell you how I make it work, and we'll have a good time with that. But thanks again for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week. Please have a good weekend, and yeah, have a good one. Clear skies, everyone, and we will see you guys next Friday for another What's Up webcast. See you later. Clear skies. Bye.